Thrive Tribe. Welcome back to another episode of Warrior Voices. Today, I am super excited because we have Melvenna with us, which runs an organization that helps support women of domestic violence. And her organization is called W.E.A.T, which stands for Women Healing Eternally and Transforming. So I'm super excited because she offers so many critical services for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. There is a lot that goes into her program. And so today our purpose is to talk all about W.E.A.T, how she got into forming this nonprofit organization, hoping that our listeners, yes, you guys, if you're in need of such services, that you have an awesome resource that you can reach out to get the help that you need. So, Melvenna, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm so thrilled to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, you're
Thank you.
welcome. So, let's first start off. Tell me about Wheat. What is your guys' mission and vision?
So WE is a nonprofit that I started, a nonprofit 501(c)(3) that I started because I am a survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, and homelessness with my son. And so I started WE just as a way to give back to survivors and to give back to other families that were in the shelter with me and my son. One day, the shelter that we were in invited us to come back to their community event for us to talk to the survivors, to encourage them, to help uplift them. And when we were there, after the event was over with, some of the survivors came to me and was like, "Hey, Mel, can you help me with my employment? Can you help me with my schooling? Can you help me get in touch with my case manager? Can you help me with my PPO?" And when we had so many people coming to me after that, I was like, I got to helping them with their stuff. And then all of a sudden, social media became, Facebook came, and all of a sudden I was getting tagged and stuff like, "Oh, I got the job. Oh, I got the house, this and that." So it was like, wait, this is what I'm loving this. This is what I'm loving to do. And so I ended up wanting to really become a person that provided like the direct services, the wraparound services. So not really so much providing the shelter for them, but definitely providing like that direct services piece. So then that was like how we kind of came about. Back before that, my life unfortunately was plagued by a lot of violence. A lot of women in my family, they either went through, sexual assault, domestic violence, homelessness. That was just like a reoccurring thing. Getting up, leaving in the middle of the night because somebody was being beat on, somebody was being raped, abused. I mean, that was just like a constant thing. And then unfortunately, it kind of just followed me, throughout my life to the point where I was in a relationship where I went through the exact same thing. And I love the guy, I loved him. I loved being with him. But, the abuse, it just kept happening. And it endangered my family. It endangered other friends, other people that tried to help us and things like that. And so we were alone. And then, nobody wanted to be involved because at the same time, they had to take care of themselves and their own family. So, me and my son ended up being by ourselves. But one day, the guy that I was with, he beat me really, really bad. And my son, he kind of jumped in and wanted to help protect me. And the guy ended up breaking my son's jaw. And so when we got there to the hospital, you can't really explain how a 1 year old, gets a broken jaw. And so that's what kind of really, really started it for me. And so when Child Protective Services stepped in, the court and everything stepped in, the police stepped in. I just remember just being in the in the waiting room with the police. You got Child Protective Services there. And I told the Detroit police officer, I was like, I start school tomorrow. I was like, I can't believe this happened. I start school tomorrow. And the officer was like, "You would?" I was like, "I start school tomorrow." I had a full scholarship to Wayne State. I showed him my student ID card. He was like, "I'm gonna give you a once in a lifetime opportunity that I don't give a lot of people. I'm gonna take you away." So he put us into a shelter. And so we got into our first shelter. It was an intake shelter, but that shelter was horrible, if I could be honest with you. It was like full of like it had to be like 100 people there. But at that time, because, things wasn't trauma informed, they wasn't strategically set up like how shelters are now, we were all in the gym. So you had, the people that were battling like drug addiction, alcoholism, all of us were in one room. And so unfortunately for a lot of the moms and stuff there, it was like, you got to watch your kids because it was like sexual assault, like everything you were running from was still happening there. So it was like a lot of people still felt like I'm safer, with the abuser. I'm safer in my car. I'm safer on the street, than being here. So a lot of them, they left. And it moved, me and my son's place up in line like very quickly, to being able to get like the full wraparound services piece that we needed. But it still took like about almost 90 days for us to really get placed into like the transitional shelter that we ended up getting placed in. And once we finally got placed there, we were there for almost 3 years. Yeah.
Wow. So what was that like, when that officer gave you that opportunity?
First I was embarrassed. First I felt exposed. I felt like the system was all in my business. I felt like I was about to lose my son. I felt like I wasn't being heard, that they didn't understand like all of the battles of survivalship that I was already facing, like all the way up. It wasn't really a lot of family support. As people said at that time, it was a lot of bridges that were burned because I wouldn't leave the abuse and stuff that I was in, or I didn't leave fast enough for them. And so it's like kind of like they felt like I made my bed, I was laying in it. So I kind of like basically brought a lot of the stuff on myself. And so I felt exposed. I was upset. But then I later found out that, him giving me that opportunity, it changed my life, because a lot of people, as I would later find out, they didn't get that opportunity. They immediately lost their kids, or they didn't have anybody that stepped in to help them at all. And I found, a lot of survivors unfortunately lost their lives, kids lost their lives, things like that. And so even though I did feel exposed, I felt, this and that. As I got to really opening up myself to being spiritual with God and having a relationship with God, I was like, oh, God was working out some stuff behind the scenes, things that I couldn't see, that I really didn't know at that time, that He was really bringing together to work it out for my good. So, yeah.
Well, and the reason I asked that, because we all have that ability to be that one person that can really change somebody's lives. And it sounds like you were given an opportunity to, go on a new pathway of your journey. And even though it seemed difficult at the time, uh, you had that choice to either go on it or not, right? And you took that risk, and that you did that. And now you're in the position to do what that officer did for you for other victims. You are literally in that position to set people on a better pathway of their life. And
Mhm.
and I feel that the best people to do that are people that truly understand what they're going through. And you have gone through, it sounds like, generations of domestic violence, and being surrounded, by that violence, that it becomes your norm. So getting into one yourself makes complete sense. So tell me a little bit more, about your situation with this guy. I heard you say that you loved him. Was this the first and only time that he abused you, or was this just the last time that he abused you?
So I had a couple of relationships of domestic violence. They started off wonderful. They started off, love. They started off, support, and I want to be there for you. But then, they ended up turning into jealousy, because, like I said, I was really successful at school. I had a good, successful, with college and things like that. So, because I had those wonderful things happening for me in school, I was meeting people that I thought was also about to be, on that successful route and stuff with me, but it didn't end up happening like that. So they were kind of, I felt like, trying to hold me back from different things that I wanted to be able to do with my life. And so because I still wanted to, as my sister told me the other day, she was like, you still wanted to continue on this path of like being successful. Whereas like other people's like, well, if he wants me to be like this, and I'm just gonna be like that. But the one thing you never let stop you was like school and wanting to be successful. And I later found out that that was the thing that kind of like made the disconnect for me in the relationships that I was in. So I would get black eyes that I would hide behind, excuses. I would get cracked ribs that I would just hide behind, staying at home and, isolating myself from family and things like that. And, just constantly being fearful and just, things like that. So it was a lot of like different abuse, just constantly leading up. And because, family would try to intervene, but then family would, be looking down the barrel of a gun, the people that I was involved with, they would all of a sudden be putting themselves in danger. I was literally on my own with it. And so, yeah.
Wow.
I was grateful that my son's father wasn't the abuser. It was just always like the other relationships that was like where the abuse came from. So you had the broken windows, in my cars, and him following me to school or him following me to work. And so couldn't keep a job because, the job had to protect the employees. So, couldn't keep that. They would move me from one place to another. I remember at one time I was working at Payless Shoes. So he moved me from one location to another, but he just kept following us. And so it was just yeah, it was like real hard times. It was real hard times. Yeah.
Wow. It sounds incredibly, well, dangerous and terrifying. So, in that situation, I think that it's incredible, though, that you held on to even just a small part of yourself, of your dream to go to school and to be successful. And I do think that is a struggle for a lot of people that are in those relationships. How did you hold on to that?
When I was in high school, I really loved being on the debate team. And my our English teacher, she's a feminist. Her name was Anita Wellman. She was such a feminist. She was all things women. And I was just like so encouraged by it. I loved it. I loved like how she was all for all things women. Like even like in our English class, we read like Pride and Prejudice, like all these different women empowerment things, like all these Jane Austen books. And so it was like a whole different mindset that I had. Like even though I knew about the abuse and everything that I was going through, she opened me up to like a new way of like thinking, and then with introducing me to debate and going up against, I was from an inner city Detroit school, going up against all these different suburban schools, and we were winning. And it was just like the confidence and the things that were like building, even though I knew what me and my sisters were going through, like with the abuse and everything we were enduring. It was like I was still, had this other life and this other thing that I was really looking forward to with myself. But then by the time I got out of high school, now I'm pregnant with my son, and different things like that. But it's still this place in my heart of like something where it's like I've been exposed to this, you know what I'm saying? And that's how I've even like learned about things like with wheat. Like all the different programs and all the different things that I have set up with wheat right now are all different things that me and my son experience through this whole journey. So it's like all of our programs, the Guiding Light program, the Phoenix Project, Healing Starts Here, are all shaped about the different things that started there. Like when you just plant that seed or you just plant that, like even if a survivor doesn't open up to it or they don't leave the relationship right then and there, the fact that you've allowed them to be exposed to it or you've opened them up to it, they won't forget it. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't forget it. And it was just like, it's something else better out here. Like I love him and I'm loving, like whatever I got going on here, but this is abuse. Like this is something that I don't want to be involved in. And I'm looking at what my mom has endured, what other family members have endured. And it's like, I don't want that to be my life. You know what I'm saying? I want something better for myself. But then I'm also mindful about the fact of like, okay, when a woman decides to leave, my chances of, passing away, my chances of being killed is like so much more higher. So yeah, I gotta be strategic. I gotta know what I'm doing with that. And so when family members try to step in, they're looking down the barrel of a gun, they're being shot at, they're being chased. It's like, so, I had to just be mindful of everything. And so, yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, because anytime we're talking about domestic violence and people leaving a domestic violence relationship, I just find it so very important that they reach out and they get the resources ahead of time, and they come up with some kind of safety plan or some kind of escape plan, because there are so many things out there that they don't even think about. That
Yes.
if they talk to someone like you from experience and education can be like, you need to do this, and kind of help them out on things that they just don't even think about. I want to talk about your family having to protect themselves. And I know, as a mother that watched her daughter be in domestic violence relationships, very dangerous ones, how helpless I felt with not being able to reach her and get her help or get her out of those situations. She was not ready for the help. And but yet it was destroying my life in the process.
Mhm.
So, and having these dangerous people around my home and the people that I love and care about. And so, as hard as it must have been to have your family, be protective of their own safety, which means they probably backed away from you a little bit. What would you say now to family members that are trying to support a loved one that's going through domestic violence, and specifically ones that they can't reach. They feel like they see them going through this, they're trying to help, and they're not leaving. They're not getting the help that is being put out there. What would you say to those family members and support people?
I would just tell them, and how I tell them even now is like definitely keep the resources open, keep the options and stuff open. Make sure that the family members are aware of the different opportunities and different options and things that are open, even if they can't keep those different things with them, because maybe the abuser might find that they have this business card or this pamphlet or this flyer. You keep everything with you. I even have it like where like sometimes, like a family member will tell me, I had that one moment where she was at my house where I thought, and it's like, you know what, at those moments, then that's when we pack that bag. And it's like, you know what? Well, this bag is just always here. Or that's when we're like, you got your wallet on you. And we take that trip to go make a copy of like, the driver's license or the social security card or different things like that. So then that bag then stays at your house. So now you have that bag and now you become a part of this untalked about safety plan where it's like I got a bag already packed here with you. Even if I just have to just leave with the stuff on my back, I know that you're a resource and stuff for me. So I have, them do things like that. But, like you said, not really pressuring a survivor to have to leave if she's not ready, but just already having her know, like, hey, I'm a resource for you. Hey, I'm available for you. But then them also knowing like their own safety, because I know for my own situation that I've watched family members, looking down the barrel of a gun or being shot at and different things like that and barely escaping with their own lives. It's like your safety is paramount. So just, being safe with, within yourself, but just keeping, options and availability and stuff, open, for that survivor for yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, as it's definitely a tough position to be in, and I love what you're saying. So you're saying, for the support person to have those resources readily available, because it is a small window that will pop up from time to time, that, that's when you get in there and be like, here, let's do, and you have the plan. Because when a victim is going through that, I tried to find my daughter help, and she also was in active addiction. That was her way of coping with all the pain that she had been through. And when trying to find her help, there was a time where I called 64 places all over the United States to try to get her in somewhere to get help, um, mentally, emotionally, but also with her addiction. And I was turned down by all 64 places. They either were not equipped or there was no room for her. And I just remember being so devastated myself that I can't imagine a person that's actually in the situation reaching out for help. So I think what you said was amazing, because if the support person just has a list of resources, that when that their loved one is ready, it's right there. It takes all the work out of it. Because it's like everything is so overwhelming when you're in the situation. So to even think about having to look for help is like, nah, nah,
Yeah.
the moment will pass. But also having a bag. And you mentioned getting copies of birth certificates and social security cards. And that's so important, and things that we don't think about. Why should they do that?
So they already have all the important documents already there. So it's like you got those documents, you got, the bag and stuff already packed. It's already at a safe place. So if I have to leave with the stuff on my back, that stuff is already there. I also tell them like if you're a safe house, like in our safety plans here, right, we always try to have like three safety houses. Like you got three safety places. So I have survivors that are not ready to leave yet, but mom is a safe place, maybe aunt is a safe place, or maybe another sibling is a safe place, but each one of them already have a bag set up. They already have like copies of different documents and stuff already set up, especially if she have kids. We already have like those different documents set up. If I have a situation where like the abuser is also being the breadwinner and she's like a stay-at-home mom, we definitely want to make sure that she has everything there, because one of the main things that he'll try to do is not give her access to things. So we want to like try to eliminate every single barrier. So on our safety plan, when we are able to talk to her, and we always get that little window where it's like, I'm open, but I'm not leaving yet. Okay, cool. What barriers do you have? So once she lets me know what her barriers are, then we know how to set the safety plan up, who needs to be a safety avenue for, and then what we need to then pack in there. So I like to like create those different things. So then like her option to be able to leave is like a better option. I will say this too though, Jamie, like when as we're talking about this, it's just making me think about like one of the other reasons why I really wanted to start WE was that even with being at the shelter, a lot of the survivors there, when I was even at the shelter, were still going back to live with their abuser. I would go to, we would be all at dinner and stuff one night, and then all of a sudden you would wake up the next morning because services are always optional, they're always voluntary. You would wake up the next morning, like for example, like, oh, what happened to Sheila? Or what happened to Deborah? And they're gone. They already don't went back to compromise with their abuser. They said, you know what, this is better for me and my family for us to just go back rather than being at the shelter. Because unfortunately, a lot of the services that were being provided back then, they were not survivor centered. They were not trauma informed. They were not geared around like you really being able to be successful coming out of the abuse. So it's like kind of like how you said, like when I am ready to leave, will you really have all of this set up for me? Like even right now, with we have a lot of survivors where when he goes to work, she's texting me, we're talking, we're emailing. He's still not ready to leave yet because it's like, if I do, are you really able to take care of me? And even as of right now, a lot of the community partners that we're involved with, everybody's waiting list is at least 6 to 8 months. A lot of people don't even have openings until 2026. So it's like she really wants to make sure, like, hey, if I'm coming out, especially if he's the breadwinner, especially if he's the one where she's getting all of her income, all of her, da da da. It's like, am I, can I really make sure? So that's why one of the things that we do at We, like I said, is that we make sure that everything is survivor centered, that when we are providing services, that they are trauma informed, that are geared around specifically what she needs. Not that she's just a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault or whatever, but that she's a mom and that he was a breadwinner and that she doesn't have a job and that she's looking to do this. And so then all the services are catered around that. So she doesn't feel the need to go back, because at the shelter that I was in with my son, a lot of women were going back. And then all of a sudden we would be in workshop a couple months later and you would find out that Sheila passed away or Deborah ended up committing suicide, because it was like he got her into so much abuse. She was suffering through so much mental illness that she later killed herself. And so that's when I ended up getting like real frustrated, even in myself, like something has to be done about this. But because the shelter felt like, wait, it's optional voluntary anyway, it's nothing on us. But it's like, it still needs to be something done about this. And so even with the grant that we has right now, I'm grateful we just got our grant from the state of Michigan just this year. But for the last 20 years, I always did everything out of pocket because after so long, I just got tired of hearing about different people passing away or even survivors losing their children. Like how my son jumped in my situation, even at what Dee Dee was like, 16 months old, and he realized, like, hey, you shouldn't be hitting on my mom. But I have so many survivors where their kids jump in, their older son jumps in, and then they're losing their lives. And so I got tired of hearing about situations like that. So I ended up going back to my husband, like, hey, can we put a loan on our house? And so that's what he let me do. So we put a loan on our house, and that's how we've been able to provide all the direct services that we've already provided this far, because it was like, hey, something has to be done about this. And I didn't want survivors to feel like they wasn't supported, because I got situations where survivors made it to the bus stop and it's like, I left, I'm out of here. And it's like, it was no room. It was like how you said, it was like, it was no room. They called as far as like even Milwaukee, Chicago, like, Ohio, all these different places, and it was no room for them. And it's like, I have to go back and now I have to think of a story because he's gonna be like, where did you go?
Right, right.
All those. So it's like, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So
I want to go back to where you said you break it down on what barriers they must be facing. That is freaking genius because when you're in a situation, you typically don't see any solutions. You just
mhm.
feel like I'm doomed for this. There's no way out. There's no way I could provide for myself or my children. You just feel helpless and you feel just that doom and gloom. And when you're in that, it's really hard to believe that there is any help out there. So for organizations like yours that break it down and it's like, okay, what are your barriers? And you help come up with those solutions, that's just genius to me. And that's why I feel that even when people are in um, a dangerous relationship like that, just one call to WE.A.T will give them some relief of, okay, there is help on the other side of this. I don't have to do this alone. I will have a team of people put in place to help me with things that I have no idea about. And the reason I asked about why the copies of birth certificates and social security cards is because I personally know survivors that have left. And like one time, this guy came and grabbed her purse, like ripped it off of her as she was trying to leave. And when she left, she had no form of identity. And it's really hard to
Uh-huh.
get a driver's license without a social security or a social security card without a driver's license. And hell, where's my birth certificate and all this? Can't get a birth certificate without those other forms of identification. So yes, it's little things like that that are so important when it comes to these safety plans. So
Uh-huh.
I I'm just like in awe of everything so far that you've talked about that your organization provides for survivors, and it's all stemmed or rooted in the pain that you went through and the firsthand knowledge of what survivors go through, because I think it's so important that, well, for me anyways, if I'm wanting help or if I'm wanting some kind of guidance, I want it from somebody that's lived it, not someone that's read about it in a book. Not someone that passed a bunch of tests because they were able to study about me and people like me and pass a test. I want people with that firsthand knowledge that understand what that fear looks like and what it feels like. And so I think it's the most beautiful thing to see survivors offer these type of services, and because it speaks volumes of you and your strength and the fact that you didn't allow that chapter to define the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
how do survivors how do survivors do that? How do they live through something so unspeakable to the point where there is life after trauma?
I know for me personally, I used to constantly keep telling myself that is life after this. Is life after this. How I encourage survivors now is like you did the hard part, you've left. Now let now this right here is about to be the easy part. Like this healing journey is going to be the easy part. We offer a support group called Healing Circles with We. We get a lot of survivors on there, that are so far along, even in their healing journey. And it's like I'm still thinking about it. Like I'm still going through this. Like how you said, Jamie, like we're all survivors. Like we've all been through it. Even though we is providing the services, we're survivors providing services to survivors. So we understand it. And then we get like women, I know I'm out of it. I'm in the new house. I got the job, this and that. But would it be bad if I was to tell you that sometimes I still think about it? No. You lived under that power and that control. That's what you thrived under. So I definitely understand it because like I told her, even out of my situation, because I knew what time he got home. I knew what time I was supposed to have the food ready. I knew what time my son needed to be in the bed, especially if it was like right now it's football time going on. He not gonna want to hear this, and this. Like I knew everything. So you set yourself around that. Now that abuse isn't going on, and now it's like free flow for myself. We don't know how to do that. So it's like now you're reintroducing your own self, re-going, all of those different things. But so how I was telling myself, just like how I tell it, like it's life on the other side of this. We journal the thoughts, we journal the issues, we write it out. Like how you said, like we did an event called Stop the Silence. We had the survivors hold up like a sign that says like I broke the silence. Like I'm not stopping myself here, like in the silence that I'm suffering in. So we writing them out. Like everything that I'm suffering in, I'm writing out those different things. And then instead of me being swamped in it in my mind, I'm investigating it out. Like, why am I thinking this? Or why am I feel lost in this? And it's like not allowing myself to, let those different things like overtake me. So it's like just knowing that it is life on the other side of this. With me, like I let spiritual things guide me, like just, praise and worship music, listening to different sermons and just going hard after like my relationship with God, really looking into the Bible and just knowing like, hey, it's something else better for this, like God brought me through this for a reason. Like, let me investigate this and find out like what I'm supposed to do this. It was like all of those different things that I went through, like you said, it shaped all of the different things. Like I tell people, books and books and degrees can give you so much, but that lived experience, like it trumps everything. Like it really helped me to really find my strength. And I'm always telling survivors, like, you're not what happened to you. You're not that situation. That situation doesn't get to define you. You get to show like how you rise up from it. So that's why we do the Phoenix Project of like how, beauty rises from ashes, like how you're rising like from this chaos. Like I don't say trapped in this situation. This situation doesn't get to win me. And then some of us, we got these kids watching us that we get to be like a powerful thing for, that we get to be something great and beautiful for. So yeah, so it's like, hey, we keep on keeping on. So,
No,
and
I
like I say,
love
it's not
that.
it's not it's not easy. I gotta tell people, healing is just not an overnight thing. Like it still continues. Like I still find myself going through stuff. Even now, I had to do the whole therapy piece, the whole everything. Now, my son, even though we were out of it, like once we, I got into a marriage, everything was different now. He still needed to go do things for himself because as he developed friends and relationships, it's just he realized like, oh, people that I know, they didn't go through things that I went through. They don't even think the way that I think about certain things, like certain ways that I'm trying to be careful on this or watch how I am on this and that. They don't even think like that because they've never even been through it. So it's like he had to even get it for himself. And then it's like how we said, Jamie, like not only did it shape like how I do wheat, but it also shaped like my ministry. Like even like a Bible class that I gave that I found out from a lot of people that was real popular. But the Bible class was like, what are you thinking? Like how I think in my mind then dictates like my thoughts, my decisions, how I look at things. Like it dictates everything. But then all of those things are dictated on experiences, like what I went through. So it's like, yeah, so it's good. I mean, God is just, yeah, he really blossomed this out good. So, yeah.
So I want to talk more about what we does, but it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So, if you don't mind, I want to ask you, as someone that has the lived experience, but also as a professional that is trauma informed, that there are some questions that I consistently hear being asked, or just things that people don't quite understand about domestic violence. One of them is, why do women stay in domestic violence situations as even when they're super dangerous? How do you answer that?
Most of the time women stay because it's just this is something that they've unfortunately got used to. And that's just something that a lot of people that are not in abusive situations, they don't really understand, because it's like, who will stay, in a situation like that? But it's like, this is a chaotic situation, but it's like a chaos that I understand. And it's a chaos that unfortunately I've got used to. I understand, your chaos, your situation as normal, where you don't get called out your name, where you don't have to worry about being fearful or being scared. Like you could turn the channel whenever you want to. Like you could come and go as you please. Like that's worrisome for me. That's too much freedom. Like I'm not used to something like that. So it's like they stay because of that. They also stay because like when I make the decision to leave, like statistics show, that's when I'm almost like 70 to 76% chance more likely of me being losing my life, especially if I'm leaving with a kid, things like that. Like that's when I'm more of a chance of being able to lose my life. And also, like I said, a lot of places don't have like the resources that's needed when they do decide to leave. So the national network to end domestic violence, they even put out like a survey that said like in Michigan, they said the National Domestic Violence Hotline said last year they ended up getting like over like 13,000 some odd requests. They said 60% of those requests wasn't able to get met because for like organizations like myself, they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the funding. So when you look at that, like, wait, 60%, that's like more than half. It's like, so yeah, a lot of
Right.
people are like, yeah, I'm just gonna compromise with my views and I'm just gonna stay home. So it's like I'm gonna just deal with this how I need to deal with it and just, compromise with him. I know his triggers. I know the things that I need to know, and I'm just gonna stay here. So yeah, yeah.
No,
So
and that's the terrifying truth of it. And thank you for sharing, your opinion on that in what you see a lot of. But I 1000% agree with you, is that we get used to the chaos. Chances are survivors or victims of domestic violence that are in the situation, they probably grew up around violence or some kind of chaos. So
mhm,
it becomes their norm. And, I guess the way I'll just say this. that I went through domestic violence, I went through sexual assaults, I went through um, long relationships with an alcoholic narcissist. And it takes a lot of healing to, I guess, to find comfort in normal, in healthy love versus my comfort being in toxic relationships. But in order to get into a healthy relationship, you have to unlearn that behavior and that thought process of chaos is comfortable, that kind of chaos. I love, like you said, like someone that can just turn the channel when they want, or they can leave the house when they want, and they can go out when they want. Like, that's crazy, right? Well, a lot of us think like that when we're in the situation because we've never seen that. And they might be a grown ass woman. And I hear that she's a grown ass woman. She should know better. But if it's all she's ever seen, and the other thing I tell people is listen, just be grateful that you don't understand, which means you
Yeah.
haven't been in that situation. You weren't raised around that kind of violence and that kind of chaos. So instead of judging, why don't you have compassion and just be grateful you don't truly understand it?
Yeah.
Because there
Yeah,
is a
like we
reason.
as of like September 30th, we were able to like rehouse like over like 55 survivors into like their new place of living. And I always send like surveys and follow-ups because I want to know like how are you doing? Is there anything else that we could do for you? And like a couple of the main things that I got from survivors just from just just like last month, just from recently, was that a lot of survivors was like, I didn't even know what to buy from the grocery store. Like because they didn't even realize like, wow, you can actually order online, go pick it up. Like I was literally looking at the list, like didn't even know what to get because it's like he always, told me what to buy, how to get this, how to get that. So it was like just even something as simple as like a grocery list. So it's like, yeah, all of those
Yeah,
things. Yep. I'm always thinking like it was like what they wear, but it was like that was like a new one for me, like even like groceries. So yeah.
right. Wow. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's control can be a very maddening thing. So let's talk about this for a little bit. Because part of the reason I started the trauma survivor ambassador program is because, well, it was in honor of my daughter and where I feel she needed more support, or what could have made a huge difference in her life is after she suffered years of sexual abuse that, that comes with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, low self worth. Um, and she didn't get that proper healing. She didn't get the professional services. I made her go to counseling, but she didn't want to participate in it because she wasn't ready. But I feel that when we get out of domestic violence relationships or after a traumatic trauma like that, that if we don't heal and give ourselves time to heal and to unlearn those behavior patterns that we have had to do just out of survival, then we end up in the next domestic violence situation and then the next domestic violence because we look for what we're comfortable in. And like you said, the nice guys, they always say they finish last. Well, it's because we're scared of you. We're not scared of our
Yeah.
abuser because they're predictable. I know, like you said, they're triggers. I know how to work around that. But these nice people, whoo, I don't deserve that. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Your love makes me feel small, kind of thing. So, talk to me about how you feel about that. Like, well, how important it is for people to get help, like through WE.A.T, to help them overcome that trauma so they don't end up in the same situation over and over again.
I feel like that wraparound services piece is very important. That's why I love the work that we do here at We because everybody's do you want to do a transitional housing? Do you want to do a shelter? Nope. I love the wraparound services piece because the wraparound services piece is key to like, you being able to thrive for the rest of your life. Or I feel like it's the difference, like you said, of like you being able to just come out of the situation or you being able to come out of it and literally transform your life from it. And so it's really important. So even with our intake form, like how you even mentioned like the mental health, like substance abuse issues, like all those everything. Like we ask all of those things in our intake form. So then every single service that's being catered to you are specifically catered based on those specific things. So if it is a mental health issue, if it is a substance abuse issue, we already have you linked with like one of our community partners that are already specifically linked with exactly what it is. So if it's substance abuse, we got you somebody that's linked in with that. If it is a mental illness, we already got you somebody else that's linked in with that. And then when it is that one-on-one healing journey that you need to get, then you already linked in with a therapist and stuff for that. And so we walk you through it because I feel like that wraparound services piece for that healing journey is very necessary, but it's very necessary that it has to hit on every single barrier. Because I feel like whatever barrier you leave loose is going to be that one thing that's going to unlearn everything you're already trying to unlearn. So like even like with the last healing circle that we did with survivors, I'm always asking them like, what else could we do differently? So some of the survivors at our last healing circles was like, with this next grant season, we would love to see you do something on confidence. We're getting to this part in our healing journey. We're like, you're meeting all these other pieces, Mel. Like you're doing the substance abuse, you're doing our mental health, da da da. But now, how do you build back up the confidence? And I'm like, okay. And then one of the survivors said, not only the confidence, but the people pleasing part. Because for so long it was all about them. It was all about pleasing them. So how do you, come out of the people pleasing, that part? So I was like, okay. So not only am I working on a workshop right now about confidence and people pleasing, but then I ended up just from even my own little workshops with survivors and just off of the stuff from my own self that I went through personally was like the self-sabotage. I ended up finding out a lot of survivors were self-sabotaging the things that they were unlearning and the services that we were providing because they felt like they wasn't worthy of it. Like, I'm not worthy of all the wonderful things that's happening for me or even for my kids because for so long I didn't think that I was worthy of those things. So it's like putting them against, self-sabotaging those things. So it's like those are like a lot of the things that I have coming out now because like you said, I think that those things are important, making sure that they have workshops and services that are specifically geared around those things. So when they told me that they wanted that, I have that. So it's like a whole workshop that we have coming out. And you're the first person I'm telling that other than my husband Thomas who knows about it, but it's called Being Okay with Being the Bad Guy.
Oh
So
my
I'm
God, I
okay
love
with being
that.
because
I
I'm
love
working on like, with the confidence, with my people please, with my self-sabotage and things, like all of those different things. But yeah, those things, they separate like you from, like I said, really, really walking in like full like thrival mode from just being surviving, or you just like going with the day to day. And I've seen so many people just go through the day to day so much to the point where it's not enough anymore. And either they later commit suicide or they're just okay with just being exactly how they are. And I just don't feel like that's just a way for anybody to live. And so I just don't want to,
no.
have anybody suffer like that. I feel like that's the whole suffering in silence part. So yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
think one reason why wheat is so astonishingly successful and amazing is that it was founded by you as a survivor and having firsthand knowledge of that life experience. But it sounds like you're building your programs based on the survivors that you're working with. Like you're getting their feedback and going, how can we do better? And I mean, what better way to build such a solid foundation for your program is surviving survivors helping survivors, right?
Yeah.
It's just like I said, right away when you know that the person that's trying to help you understands
Mhm.
firsthand, it gives you instant credit. Like, like, okay, I'm going to believe in what she has to say because she's lived this. So, one other thing I want to debunk is this belief that will tell themselves, well, at least he doesn't hit me, or I don't need these kind of resources because he doesn't he doesn't hit me all the time, or it's not as bad as Sylvia went through. She needs the resources. I don't. Like, what do you say to survivors that minimize their trauma because it doesn't, in their opinion, compare to others?
Mhm. Yeah, so I do unfortunately get a lot of survivors, that do go through that. And so I'm always telling them about I walk them through the stages of abuse. Like this is what abuse is. Like, even though your abuse may not be physical, your abuse is still mental, your abuse is still verbal, different things. I still walk them through the stage of them. When I walk them through the stage of like what abuse is, and then they'll tell me like, okay, well, my abuse wasn't that, but then it has been this and this. So we'll walk through it, but then I'll let them point it out, like what your abuse and stuff is. Once we go through the stage of abuse, what yours is, what yours isn't, then I walk them through the effects of it. And when we get to that effects part, they're always like, wow, I want them to see like the effects of it, like with everything you're going through, like with how the PTSD parts or how the trauma starts, like how the, just the suicide, like everything, like all of the effects from all of those different things, whether yours is physical or not, all the effects of it is still the same. Everything you still end up with at the end of the day will still be just as much as a person that was physically abused, emotionally. It'll still all end up being the same. And so they always feel like, well, I didn't want to worry about this and that. Maybe you can help this person because they need, like, it'll still end up being the same way. Just because yours was a setup like this and that, it still doesn't mean anything. And so I'm always walking them through that. You know what I'm saying? And so that they're always like shocked about that because they feel like, well, because he didn't actually hit me, then I'm actually okay. Well, he doesn't raise his voice, but then he financially abuses you. But yeah, he's still limiting you. He's still stopping your progress from you being able to be successful in life, because now once you decide to come out of that relationship and you want to go buy a house or you want to go get a car or you want to end up going back to school or something, he's already thwarted the credit score and everything else. So it's like, yeah, yours wasn't the abuser piece, but he still limited these things. So it's like you're still going through like the later turmoil things that anybody, somebody else would be going through that wasn't like the abusive part. So it's like you might not have suffered on one end, but you still suffering on the other end. And so I always like to walk them through the stages of abuse, what all that looks like, let them pick that out, and then walk them through the effects of it, and then what the after residuals of it is. And it's like they see, oh, it's the same. I know. It's still the same. I like to let them do the work of it though, as I just showed them the pieces of it, let them do the work of it and let them kind of connect the dots on their own. So, but
Yeah,
yeah.
because once they start seeing it on paper, it's easier to be like,
Hmm.
"Oh, shit. I guess
Yeah.
so,"
Yep.
versus me trying to tell you. But I do
Yep.
like, so my program is not just domestic violence survivors, it's survivors of all trauma, because I agree with you that to me trauma is trauma and it cannot be compared to anybody
Mhm.
else's trauma. I was just talking with somebody that lost a spouse, and she's been told, well, losing a child is the worst kind of grief. And I'm like, well, coming from a mother that lost a child, I'm going to call bullshit on that, because it's still, that was your person, you know?
Yeah.
And so we can't compare traumas. It's whatever you're going through is the worst for you, which means you do deserve the help. You do deserve, the resources. Don't ever minimize your trauma or your abuse compared to anybody else's, you know?
Mhm.
I also
Mhm.
feel that, like you said, all abuses kind of come down and they give the same aftermath, if you will.
Uh,
But healing, in my opinion, is kind of the same thing. Is no matter what your trauma, healing is always the same. And it always, to me, and a lot of people don't connect healing with grief. But like you were saying, that one survivor that could be months later go, is it weird that I still miss him? Or is it weird that I think about him? No, because you're grieving, and you're grieving that loss. And whether it was a good or bad loss, it was a loss. Your brain cannot distinguish the difference. You are living with this person every single day, and you have
mhm.
this life that you craved and you wanted. And when you left that relationship, all of that died with it. It is a
Mhm.
loss. And you're going to go through that anger, and you're going to go through the sadness and, and the denial of it, right?
Mhm.
And it goes for any kind of trauma, not just a domestic
Mhm.
violence. It could be
Mhm.
being diagnosed with cancer. You're going to grieve that life that you had before, or who you were in that
Mhm.
time before, right? So tell me, I know I've had you on here for a little while, but I'm just getting kind of started. I want to hear more about WE.A.T. Tell me what services you guys provide and who you provide the services for.
So we provide direct services to survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, as well as families that are experiencing homelessness. So you don't even have to be a survivor. If you're just a family where it's like we're going through homelessness, we have some issues or something come up and we're just finding ourselves falling on hard times, then we provide you services too. So all of our direct services are jobs, education, any type of like skill trade training that you need. We have like a program that provides like a 2 year free pay, training online up to like 200 different degree certification programs that we do and everything for survivors. We do safety planning, case management, housing, transportation assistance. We do all of the different things. On our website, we have the intake form there. The whole website walks through all the different services that we offer. It goes into detail on the services. And then the second to the last page is the intake form where they're able to fill it out. And then they're able to let us know about any barriers that they have if they don't have transportation, if they don't have income, if they do have any substance abuse issues, any mental illnesses, like they can already just let us know all of those different things right there. Any specific services that they need, if they do need, like I said, case management, safety planning, hey, I need transportation assistance or you need housing assistance, we provide all of those different services that they might need. And then we just go from there. We reach out to them and see exactly how we can help them out and yep, just go from there with them. Yeah,
That's
walk
incredible.
walk to
So
them, walk with them every step of the way.
wow.
Yeah.
So they can go on your website and do the intake form right on your website, and
Yep,
then
www.weatorganization.com.
okay,
Mhm.
I'm gonna make sure I put that in the description of this, so people can easily access that. I think it's great that you're doing the intake right online because some, organizations, you have to call, and
Mhm.
it's like me, I have to actually talk to somebody, like, that's really could be very uncomfortable, so to be able to do that intake, online and private, I think is amazing. Um, now do you reach out to everybody that does an intake, whether you can help them or not help them? Do you always reply to them or get in touch with them?
Yeah, we still always reply to them. If it's somebody that we can't help because maybe we just have a lack of funding in that area. So as of right now, we basically have funding and stuff for domestic violence. We don't really have funding for the sexual assault work we do, the human trafficking work, or the homeless work. So a lot of that work I'm still paying for out of pocket, or I'm paying for with other community partners, in kind donations and stuff like that. So based off of like what she completes, like online, like 'cause sometimes we'll have like a family, for example, where we don't have money for homeless work, but maybe she's telling me like, "Hey, I just need some clothes. The kids need a coat or something like that." We do have a nice big storage facility, and our storage facility has all brand new clothes, items and stuff that they might need. So I'm still able to pull those items for her, and then we drop off those items to her or meet up with her, and she could come and pick up those items. So we do. I will still email her and let her know like, "Hey, I don't have funding for that, but here are the resources. I don't. I offer those different things, but here are the resources." We get referrals from the 211 Michigan 211 registry, the National Domestic Violence Hotline sends over referrals and stuff all the time, but we still get back with everybody. On the intake form, one of the questions is like, "Are you in danger right now?" If she says she's in danger right now, it comes to me and to other people on my board. And so somebody's going to reach out to her like right then,
Mhm.
like within the next hour. If she says that she's not in immediate danger, then she'll get a response back within like a day or two. And then,
I
but yeah,
love
we
that
all we
because
respond back to everybody. Yeah, yeah.
okay, that's just so important because I feel like if someone takes the time to do the intake and if they didn't get an answer back, regardless whether it could be help, it's like a form of rejection. So I love
Yeah.
that. Thank you for clarifying that. So my next question is, how can people that are watching this, or how can companies and businesses and investors, how can they support WE.A.T to get you that funding for those additional things like sexual assault survivors or homelessness? How can we support your organization?
They can support Wheat by going online on our website. We have a donation link there, where we're asking for donations for items and stuff there. Right now, our active fundraiser we have going on right now is that we're trying to get coats. I have a in-kind donation that gives me coats for adults, but they don't give coats for kids. And so we're trying to get coats for like the survivors' children, because unfortunately we have a lot of survivors because housing is very limited here in Michigan. A lot of survivors unfortunately are living in their cars. We're trying to get coats for a lot of the survivors' children. And so we're looking for coats sizes 2T up to a 1820, and then adult sizes small and medium. So we have that all listed on the website, as well as the donation links for our PayPal, as well as our Zelle. And if they just want to send a traditional check, we have like that information there all listed on the website there.
Wow. So they can go on, do you have like an Amazon list or anything where they can order off of and have it just directly shipped to you?
Yep, if they were to email us, then I could send them over the list, and then they could send it. Yep, they could be able to send it directly to us. On our Facebook, we do list like our Amazon list, the wish list that we have set up, and how they can mail the items and stuff. But then I can send it directly to them as well. Yeah,
Okay.
I think the flyer is also up on our Facebook page too. Yeah.
That's good. How else do you have like events throughout the year to help raise funds to support some of these services?
Yep, we do like contests, like it'd be different organizations. For example, like Flame had like a contest, like where you voted for like your favorite nonprofit, and so we do different things like that. And then we have like different events and everything. We do like a mental health awareness with NAMI, the National Association for Mental Illness. So we do like different workshops and stuff with that. We do like a back to school event, like a Stronger Together back to school bash. We have like a Bless a Family like Christmas event coming up. We do like a community baby shower with another organization that just provides like community that provides baby resources to survivors and stuff that are pregnant or have recently had a baby. So we do a lot of different things, but each of those things are led up like with different fundraisers and stuff up to it before we get ready to do it. So yeah.
Okay.
And then I have like a background too, like in the legal. And I've been worked for the last 20 years in the legal field. So a lot of like the lawyers and law firms and judges and different people, they give like a lot of in-kind donations and stuff to we. So we've been able to kind of go along for a long time with that. And so even when you ask me about like the copies of like documents, I think I got that from even with my law firm background as well. Cause a lot of the services that we do for survivors are survivors from immigrants, like immigrant background. So a lot of their abusers is the green card holder. So I'm
Mhm.
always like real big about them making copies of documents so they don't have to feel like they have to, deal with that. But yeah,
Mhm.
so that comes again, just like a lot of the ways of like how we set up stuff. So,
So to follow you like on Facebook, is that where you post upcoming events and different ways people can support? Is that okay? So
yeah.
I'm going to put
Yep.
your Facebook
Mhm.
link
Post a lot
in
on Facebook and Instagram.
Facebook and Instagram. Awesome. So lastly, I want to ask you, I know some organizations and nonprofits are limited to like their county or their state. So does someone have to live in a particular county to be able to get your services? Are you Michigan based, county based?
Yep. So we do Metro Detroit. So we're basically doing Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, St. Clair, Lindenwood, and Washtenaw County. So we do all of those 6 different counties.
Well,
Yeah.
those are some awful large counties, so a lot of people
Yeah.
out there that
Yeah.
can definitely benefit from your support. So, do you also ever have, um, I guess, opportunities for volunteer work for people to come and help or like help you with events, anything like that?
Yep,
Okay.
we do. We like for the back to school, we had volunteers come in to help us pack up the book bags. We had people that actually went shopping to get the school supplies that we needed for the book bags, and went and bought the actual book bags and stuff for us. We also had volunteers that came in because we had it at Zap Zone in Sterling Heights, so they came into Zap Zone and kind of set up everything and stuff for the kids. And because a lot of our kids are coming from shelters, and they are coming in off the streets too as well. A lot of them had never been to Zap Zone, so they had no idea how to play laser tag, how to do bumper cars. So we just had like just different. We actually had students, like students from various high schools, because I just recently found out that for a lot of students to graduate from high school, they needed 50 hours of community service. So a lot of the students were just there to help them put the vest on. This is how you shoot the gun. Like this is how you swipe the card to like play a video game. So a lot of them were there. So we have those opportunities coming up for our Christmas event. We have like opportunities for people to come in to wrap up gifts, to go shopping for gifts. And then back around for like the community baby shower, we have opportunities for people to go and grab different items and stuff that we need. They come in. We have like 2 days leading up to the community baby shower where they come in and just help us like get everything together. So we'll have like a boy car seat. You get together the diaper bag for the boy, like put everything on there, put the blue ribbon on there, like different
I love
opportunities.
that.
So yeah, we have opportunities
So
for it. So
how do they sign up for that for volunteers? Is it on your website or where would they go to say, "Hey, I want to volunteer. I want to do shopping or I want to play with the kids at Zap Zone." How do they do that?
Facebook and on Instagram, when we're about to get ready to have the event, we'll put the flyer and stuff up. And then on that post, it'll just say, volunteers are needed. Like if you're interested, and then we'll give our email address, weorganization at Gmail, for them to just reach out to us if they're interested in volunteering.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on. I know we met at an educational seminar that we both were attending, and I just love your energy. I love your heart. I love
Thank you.
how your journey just went from such complete darkness. Like you only touched very little about the situations in the domestic violence that you've been in, but it goes far deeper than
Yeah.
what you shared today. So when I tell the listeners, this girl knows.
Okay. Yeah.
She's seen it, she's been through it, she knows of it. She is definitely someone you can trust with your whole being. I mean that from the bottom of
Yeah.
my heart. The moment I met you, I knew that, and I thought I need to get you on to talk about all these amazing services that you do. And again, I think what is so just phenomenal is it's coming from personal experience of yours, is what built the foundation of W.E.A.T. But what keeps it going and what keeps building onto it is stories from the other survivors and the survivors that you've helped. And you take the time to hear them and to listen to their needs and what helped, what didn't help. And you use that information to keep building for the next survivor and the next survivor. So thank you
Yeah,
again for.
every event we have, every workshop we have, the last 15 minutes are always to the survivors. Like, hey, what do you want to say? Like, let us know. Like, even like the way we set up our webinars is always set up where the survivor doesn't see anybody else but me. You only see whoever's presenting. If you want to see each other, you could comment in the chat if you want to. If not, we have like a box that's anonymous. They could say something anonymously, but it's always just geared around their confidentiality, their safety, and whatever they're comfortable with. But I also do that so that they can feel safe enough or, feel comfortable enough to like share, exactly how they feel. Like, you know what, Mel, I didn't really like that, or like this, like, this and that, so they can really let me know how they feel without feeling like, somebody's going to know like what they said or like, who said that, this and that, because I want them to know. And then even afterwards, when they go to take the surveys and stuff afterwards, I want to put everything like geared around them. But I definitely want your listeners to know I definitely come from that background. Like I've lost two sisters from domestic violence. One even as early as like the beginning of this year in February, like she basically passed away from just like the effects from like her domestic violence and her human trafficking. So it's plagued my life for all of my life, and so it's just like now these last 20 some years have been wonderful, with my husband Thomas and everything. But like I said, just getting used to like being deserving of it and just like walking through it. Like even as I do the workshops and put the stuff together, I'm still battling like with the own things, even in my own head. And just looking at how Catholic Social Services was the one that provided the services to me and my son that I'm providing to women now. Catholic Social Services was who did all of our wraparound services, because even the shelter I was in, they didn't even provide it. You know what I'm saying? Catholic Social Services did. And so
Mhm.
that's how I was able to get to where I am now. But yeah, so yeah, it's
Well,
real important to me that survivors thrive. So.
yes, I can hear that, and I can hear that in your tone. I can hear that in your energy. I can tell that you live and you breathe and you thrive through helping others. I do want to end this podcast episode on one final question. Is um, I believe that when we share our stories and we talk about the trauma that we've been through, regardless of the trauma, it helps us heal. But what I have found was in my advocacy for places like Haven and for other domestic violence survivors, I've learned very quickly that it's very rare for trauma survivors to share their story. And even as soon as like I started this program and had some people sign up as an ambassador, shortly after sharing their story, they were getting some kickback from family or loved ones or even people that haven't even been in their life that are like, hey, that's embarrassing. Take that down, and tries to silence them. And it was so devastating to hear that because to me, it's like, I have that attitude like, I lived it. I'm going to tell it if I want to. And I'm not going to make myself small to make anybody else more comfortable
Mhm.
because I'm in charge of my healing. And when I share my story as a survivor and as a warrior, not as a victim, but I share it in hopes to heal other people, it empowers me and helps me on my healing journey because I don't feel um, healing is like this destination, this place we're going to get and just say no. It's continuously working, because if it's not this trauma that I'm healing from, it's going to be the next one that life throws at me, because life always lifes us and things happen. So my question to you is, how do you encourage people to share their trauma stories like you shared yours with me today, and why?
I encourage them to share it. I encourage them, first of all, to share like what they're comfortable with sharing. Because I ended up finding out for myself personally, like from telling like parts of my story, and then from watching how my sisters like tell like different things we went through, and other survivors and stuff, that later after they would share it, they would end up feeling bad about it, or they would feel like raw and open and everything, and wouldn't know like was it appreciated and stuff like that. And then they would just feel, oh, I'm not doing that again. Like I didn't feel, this and that. So it's like, well, always just feel comfortable with sharing like what you feel comfortable with sharing. But I personally did actually experience that with my husband. My husband wasn't comfortable with me sharing a lot of the things that I had went through. He was very uncomfortable at different events when I would talk about it, because he would say, you don't get the looks, you don't get the look backs. And I'm like, well, they know it wasn't you, you know what I'm saying? But he didn't like it, because he felt like, now that you're married and we've moved on, I just hoping that you could move on, then you and Dee Dee could move on. But it was like, no, I want us to be able to talk about it. Like I want my son to be able to be comfortable with what we went through, what I experienced. I want that to be okay. And then when the Detroit News article came out, so when Detroit News did like an article on me and my son, I didn't know that it was going to be on the front page. But when it got on the front page and it was like my husband's pictures on the front page, oh, that just like blew the can off. It was bad, because a lot of people in his family, they knew a little bit about what me and Dee Dee went through or whatever, but they didn't know everything. And so that was just like really, really big for Thomas. But I would say the one thing that I did appreciate, and the one thing that I'm always telling survivors about it, like when they do open up about it, is that the Detroit News, Detroit Free Press, they really got it right, because they really went to like Catholic social services. They went back to the shelter that we were from. They went to my professors at Wayne State. Like they went and got like quotes from everybody. So it made it, like how you say, it made it a whole warrior story. You know what I'm saying? And how even like from the title of it, you know what I'm saying? So I really love like how they did that part. And they even had like their videographer and their reporter like follow my son like that whole week of school, to like really follow him, to really bring the whole story out, because they wanted to show like how a kid, from the shelter, who lived in the car with his mom, became like a hero, a hero among us. And it was like a hero, like a silent hero among us. And it was just how it came out. And it was just like getting my husband to even see it like that. But so that's how I'm like to try to encourage like survivors and stuff too, like to see yourself as like that hero. You were like that silent hero that was like among us, like that unsung hero, like in the story, and like, and them being able to see that, for themselves, and like even like now, like for myself, like how I thank you, Jesus. Like how I even see it, like from my daughter. Like my daughter's never witnessed it. She's never went through what I went through. Like she doesn't know how it feels to like be raped or be abused, or like to even hear the sounds, like what I even hear sometimes of like my own sisters being raped and abused. Like she doesn't understand, like, why you always wear, lipstick that's your color? Why you don't put on red lipstick? But she doesn't know that red lipstick is a trigger for me. She doesn't know like certain sounds, like certain songs is a trigger for me, because it was songs that was played when me and my sisters were being raped and abused. Like she doesn't know those different things. And so it's like it's power in it. It's power in telling, like, it's sad, it hurts, it's all those different things. It reveals all those different passions, but then it then frees somebody else. It lets somebody else know, number one, I'm not alone. Like as I'm still feeling these feelings, like it's not just me by myself. But then it lets somebody else know, like, hey, like this story that is like so much pain and heartbreak for me to tell, then it then be able to like be the one thing that then be able to lift them up, to let them know, like, hey, keep going. Like like it doesn't end here. Like hard times doesn't end here. Like this bad thing that we all experienced, this thing that we all went through, like this one man that we wanted to love, or this relationship that we thought, or like you said, like this family dynamic that we thought was a comfortable dynamic. Like every day I tell, like, I'm up against the dynamic every day. I want my son to make sure he's respecting women and this and that, but I want my daughter to know the value in herself. Like we're up against it every day. But yeah, it's power in telling the story. Is it painful? Yes. Like, do it hurt? Every time, you know what I'm saying? Every time, like even coming on here now, it was like, oh man, ooh, it's about to open up so much. But it takes a minute to get past it, but it's so worth it, especially because then it helps somebody else. And maybe if she doesn't come out today, she'll remember something. It'll say, something, and it'll be like, hey, what tried to destroy me? You know what I'm saying? What
Yeah.
tried to break me down? What tried to kill me? So it's like, okay, so and like our theme for domestic violence awareness month for WE is that I created like a campaign that says like survivors, like we rise like unapologetically. Like we're unapologetic to everything that, try to tear us down and break us down. We unapologetic to that. Like I'm rising up. I'm soaring regardless. Like I'm not about to be ashamed of what I went through. I was ashamed for a lot of years, Jamie. Like my son got his jaw broke. He had to get it rewired. He needed braces. I mean, my son had to get braces like 4 times. It's like,
Yeah.
it's all those different things. And I had to deal with that for so long to the point where I let him get away with stuff where like people was like, why you let him get away with talking to you like that, cussing and like all that? But I just felt like I owed that to him because of what I put him through. So it was like all of those different things I had to go through. But I'm telling you, it's a learning journey. But once you get on the other side of it, like you said, when you're able to guide somebody else through it, and it's like, hey, I lived it. I went through it. I give you situations. I give you, certain issues, but it's like, it makes it worth it. And is it hard? Yes, every day. But yeah.
I think it's hard. I think every time we do tell our story, it builds us a confidence in us. It does make us stronger. So eventually your story starts getting easier. Like I couldn't tell my story without busting down and crying, and now I can tell my story. I still get emotional. I can still feel the lump in my throat sometimes, but I'm able to get past that. But what I loved is that they're like that unsung hero. And they might not see themselves as a hero, but somebody else, when they hear that story, is going to see the hero in them. And so, thank you for sharing that because I do feel like sharing our stories, allowing ourselves to be exposed to help heal ourselves and others is just magical. So,
Yeah.
again, thank you, Melvenna. I appreciate you taking the time with me today. To my Thrive Tribe, I hope that you got a lot out of this episode. We were able to cover so much. We were able to cover what WE.A.T, all the services that this amazing organization can offer. They have volunteer opportunities. They have opportunities for you to sponsor or to donate, whether that be cash or supplies. But most importantly, what I love that she talked about today was that escape plan, that safety plan, and how incredibly important it is. So if you live in one of the Metro Detroit counties that she spoke of, and you find yourself in a dangerous situation, it is as easy as going on their website and filling out this intake form to get some help that you need. But also, Melvina talked about if you are a family member that has someone that you love that is going through such like a domestic violence situation, um, what you can do, and that's become a resource for them. You may not be able to get them to leave the relationship, but having a bag packed, getting them to make copies of their driver's license, their social security card, all of those things you can do to help. And one day, you know, pray to God, one day it will dawn on them, I need to get out. And that's when you can step in. You've got their bag, you've got the resources, you got all the things to help them out. So thank you for listening to this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Share this with anybody that might be going through a domestic violence situation that could use WE.A.T as a strong resource for them. I will put her information down in the description. Please follow them on Facebook and get them out in front of as much audience as we can, because what they do is incredible, but most importantly, it's life saving. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. We'll see you next week.